So basically what happened last week was Conrad took the whole idea, the big picture of the end of Mark 4 into Mark 5, and he drew out this phenomenal picture for us that Jesus, with his disciples, went across the sea. They went through the storm to the other side, where they saw this demon-possessed man, healed the demon-possessed man, and then headed back. That was it. Jesus went through all that just for one person. And the whole point was, if he's going to do that for one person in the Bible, how much more will he do that for you and your situation? And it was phenomenal. So as I'm studying this week, one of the things that's really coming out to me is this story about the demon-possessed man. This story and the details hidden within this story are absolutely incredible, and they make that theme just pop. So today, I thought, hey man, let's do a part 2. Nothing wrong with that. We're going to go back to what we just read a little bit, and we're going to do a part 2 version of it with the auspice of Jesus went through all this for the one person, and that's what he does with us. Okay? So turn in your words to Mark chapter 4, and we're going to start Mark 4, and we're going to start at verse 35. And the wind and the waves obeyed Jesus. We just sang about this. On the same day when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us cross over to the other side." Now when they had left the multitude, they took him along in the boat as he was, and other little boats were also with him. So we get this picture already that it's not just one boat, as the story, pictures show. There's one boat with Jesus, and there's a bunch of boats. There's a bunch of boats going across. And other little boats were also with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat. Thank you. Yeah. Thank God it's summer, right? Let's try that again. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling. But he, Jesus, was in the stern, asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" Then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, "Who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him?" In verse 35, we read something that was alluded to last week. And we read that Jesus took his disciples and went to cross over to the other side. Why is this significant? Where is the other side? What's over there? Did Jesus know what was happening? Did he know who he was going to? Well, of course he did. But what was the purpose of going to the other side? And why was it so significant that they would say, hey, they're going to the other side? It seems to suggest that something deeper than just, hey, hop in the boat, let's go over there. The other side in history teaches us that there is a significance to where Jesus was going and where he was heading to. The other side referred to, as we read in Matthew 5, chapter 1, then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. Now this country of the Gadarenes, this other side, was known as the Decapolis of the time. It was basically GTA of the day. So GTA is a mixture of a bunch of cities. The Decapolis, the Gadarenes, was a Decapolis of 10 cities grouped together. So this is where they were going. This area, this region, was known by all at the time as a place that was inhabited by evil spirits. Jesus, on the same day when evening had come, at night, Jesus grabs his boys and is like, "Fellas, we're going over to where the spirits live, and it's nighttime." That body of water separating where Jesus was and the Decapolis, that body of water was also known as, in folklore of the Jewish folklore of the day, this was an abyss that was inhabited by evil spirits. So the folklore of the day, as Jesus had just finished ministering to the multitudes and doing these incredible miracles, the disciples are all jacked up, they're pumped up, and he's like, all right, guys, it's nighttime. Let's cross over the abyss where the evil spirits are and go to the Decapolis where the evil spirits abide, and let's go take care of business. And the disciples are probably like, Now, whether that was true or whether that was folklore, the truth of the day was that this was the mindset that the disciples were going into this thing with. You know what makes sense? I'll make sense for you guys. As a kid, my bedroom was in the basement. Yeah, that's right. As a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid with an active imagination, my bedroom was in the basement. In fact, my bedroom was so in the basement that there was no lights in the basement. That at nighttime, I'd be lying there in the dark, in my room, in my basement, with my covers up to my neck, and I would see I had a small little slit windows, and every time a car would drive by, you could see the lights, and they would kind of shine through the cracks, and I was like, ghosts, ghosts. Totally messed me up. I had an active imagination as a kid, and I was afraid of the dark. I'm over it now. Mostly. Now, here's the deal. I didn't believe that my basement was inhabited by evil spirits. I didn't believe that there were ghosts or monsters under my bed, even though my dreams showed me that there was demons in my closets. I knew that there weren't. But my mindset, whenever I walked into my closet in the middle of the night, not that I had to, but if I would, the mindset was, oh my goodness, I can't go in there, because what if there's a demon in there? So I'd flick the lights on, and then make sure they're all bright, and I'd get my flashlight out, and then I'd go in my closet. It wasn't that I knew for sure that they were there, but it was the fear of the unknown precipitated by the dreams and thoughts that were going on up in here. And I think this is similar to what was happening with the disciples. It's not that they didn't trust Jesus. It's that all throughout their lives, this area, this region had a label to it. It inspired fear. It precipitated fear for anyone that crossed over the sea into this Decapolis. So what do you think was going through the disciples' minds when they're going through the abyss and all of a sudden a great random windstorm appeared and they're freaking out. Most of these guys are fishermen. They pretty much live in boats. They know storms. They could read weather charts and patterns. These aren't dumb people. They would have been some of the best navigators of the seas of the day. But when you bring into context that it was night, so it's dark outside, they're crossing over the abyss, going to the place that is inhabited by the evil spirits. And all of a sudden, a windstorm arises and the waves get crazy. You can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to be freaked out. Not because they've never gone through a storm before, because all of these fears in that moment start playing on their mind. Those fears become realized even though they don't know for sure that this is what's happening. It's the same thing as me. Like I remember walking in my basement. My mom had like a feather duster, and it kind of like sat on one of the bookshelves, and it kind of like hung over, okay? And so every now and again, if I wasn't careful, as I'm walking, it would brush my face. Right? In the middle of the night, I'm going to the bathroom, Good Lord, if I ever even make it there. Because I'm walking, and all of a sudden this thing brushes me. I start. That's what's happening here. All this fear is being manifested in their lives. There's a point here I'm trying to make. The first point is this. What I love about the disciples is that they didn't back off. Well, they got scared, and they were like, Jesus, help us, we're going to die. Blah, blah, blah. Aside from that point, they actually got in the boat. They got in the boat. They went to cross over to the other side, to go where no man wanted to go. And opposition arose. You see, when God asks us to do something, when Jesus asks us to go somewhere, when we ask us to step out of our fear or go through our fear and step into faith, when that happens, opposition often arises. There are things in my life and my wife's life that we could tell you story after story after story, that when we make specific decisions to do something, opposition arises. Opposition arises. Because once we understand and realize that this battle is not against flesh and blood, that there is, the powers at force here that we cannot really see, that there is a war going on for your soul. You're not just sitting here pretty and being like, oh yeah, this is nice, my life is great. There is a war, a spiritual war going on for your soul right now, whether you realize it or not. You might be sitting here thinking, yeah, I do my church time. I show up, once a week, or on vacation, I give 12% in the offering plate, and I do all these right things, and you think that you're good, but there's a reality that's greater than that there is a war for your soul. And when opposition arises, it arises to detract us from the goal. The storm arose because if you look at the story, the satanic forces did not want them to go to the other side because they knew what Jesus was about. They knew that if Jesus went to the other side, it would spell no good for them. They knew what Jesus kind of power he beheld. They knew what kind of miracles were happening through the hands of Jesus. And don't tell me that the demons didn't see that. They saw that. Opposition arose in order to hinder and stop God's people from being obedient to him. We are a generation that does not like opposition. We are a people in this Western culture of Christianity that does not like to admit that when opposition comes, we tend to flee. We tend to think that if opposition's arising, that we're doing something wrong, but we need to start looking at it. It might not be that way. It might be that when we're being obedient to the Holy Spirit, opposition arises because there's a war going on for your soul. There is a spiritual battle that does not want you to connect with Jesus. The disciples, they stepped in the boat. They went through the storm. God sustained them. Because that's what Jesus does. No matter what the opposition is, no matter what the trial is, no matter what that hold-up period is, God will sustain you. So if you are in the middle of your opposition right now, know this, God will sustain you. He will sustain you. He will see you through to the other side. He will make sure that you do not perish in the waves of the sea. He will make sure that you will make it to the other side as you are obedient to him. When we are obedient to Christ, when that opposition comes and we cling to him, we get through it. That's his promise to us, and that's his promise, exactly what happened here with the disciples. So keep in mind that as we're reading the story about what the disciples have just gone through, put into perspective this next section. Chapter 5, verse 1. Then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. And when he had come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one could bind him, not even with chains, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains. And the chains had been pulled apart by him, and their shackles broken in pieces. Neither could anyone tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him. And he cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God that you do not torment me." For he said to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." Then he asked him, "What is your name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Also, he begged him earnestly that he would not send them out of the country. Now a large herd of swine was feeding there near the mountains, and so all the demons begged him, saying, "Send us to the swine, that we may enter them." And at once Jesus gave them permission. Then the unclean spirits went out and entered the swine. There were about 2,000 of them. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea and drowned in the sea. So those who fed the swine fled, and they told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that had happened. Then they came to Jesus and saw the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion sitting and clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And those who saw it told them how it happened to him who had been demon-possessed and about the swine. Then they began to plead with him. They began to plead with Jesus to depart from their region. And when he got into the boat, he who was demon-possessed begged him that he might be with him. However, Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, "No, go home to your friends and tell them what great things the Lord has done for you and how he had compassion on you." And he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. An incredible story, but when I look at Jesus and his disciples getting off that boat onto the shores, keep in mind, middle of the night or evening, it just doesn't matter, it's dark. They just went through the storm of the century. They're now on the land that is inhabited by evil spirits. And they have a welcoming committee. There must have been a graveyard or a tomb selection somewhere up in the midst, because within eyeshot or earshot, they hear sounds. They hear screeching. They hear yelling. They hear whatever's going on, and out from the graveyard runs this crazy guy shouting and hooting and hollering. What's going on in your mind? I'm getting back in the boat, and I'm going to the middle of the lake. I'm saying, it was better there. But isn't that how it is? When we go through opposition in our lives, God uses each stage of opposition to strengthen us for the next stage. Some of the things that I go through now as a senior pastor, you would have thrown those to me 10 years ago, just put me in the hospital. I would have cracked. I would not have been able to deal with it, because every single situation, every single term or notion of opposition that we face with, God gives us the strength to deal with it. And how many of us can here say, based on what you're going through right now, you can look back at your life and be like, "Oh, that was easy. Why was I so worried back then? Why was I freaked over that?" This is how God works. This is how he operates. He takes us through the waves. He takes us through the windstorm. He takes us through these trying opposition times, holds our hand, carries us along, does whatever it needs to be to get us through, teaches us lessons that we need to learn. And then there's more opposition. And then there's something else. And then there's a crazy man running out of the tombs, yelling like a maniac. So let's take a look at this demon-possessed man. He lived in the grave, which in those days was held, the common belief, that this was the direct, specific home, if you will, of the evil spirits. He was so spiritually bound that he could not be physically bound. Now, this is interesting. We read that in chapter 5, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one could bind him, not even with chains, in verse 4, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces. Neither could anyone tame him. What we're seeing here is interesting, because what we've been taught previously is that our physical chains and our physical, stuff, hinder us spiritually. The bondages that we have in our physical life, they hinder us from growing deeper into our relationship with Christ. And here we're seeing a bit of a flip. We're seeing that he was so spiritually bound that no physical thing could touch him. No physical thing could affect him. No physical thing could hold him. He was that entrenched with demonic activity. He wasn't just possessed. He wasn't just oppressed with opposition. He was possessed not just by one demon, but with multitudes of demons, with thousands of demons. Legion translates into the word term multitude. Multitude being many. And when we see that it was translated that the demons eventually went into 2,000 swine, we get the understanding that he was so jam-packed with demonic activity that he pretty much ceased to exist. Who he was, wasn't. He would wander the mountains crying out, cutting himself, having no control of who he really was. He was in total bondage. No area of his life was his own. He was completely turned over to the power and control of the demonic realm. And then Jesus comes upon the scene. Jesus looks at him and he begins to speak to the demons. And he speaks to the demons. He calls them out. They respond. And they ask that they would not leave the country. For whatever reason, Jesus allows that and sends them into this herd of swine. The swine go down the hill, destroyed, all that kind of stuff. And when the people saw Jesus' great power, what was their response? Was it to bow down and worship him? No. They asked him to leave. After seeing what they just saw, why would they ask him to leave? To me, that makes no sense at all. Like here's a guy who has power over everything that you believed, and you're asking him to leave. Wouldn't you be like, yo, come stay. Come stay, come dwell with us, because this is like, we've never seen this ever before. Why would they ask him to leave? Here's my thoughts. I think they asked Jesus to get out of there because he just wiped out their pigs. Why is that significant? You see, the swine of the day, swine were used, the pig's blood was used as a sacrifice to these evil spirits. Essentially, Jesus effectively took away their only way to appease the evil spirits. You see, even them, they were stuck in bondage. They were so blinded to their bondage that they could not see the light. They saw the light, and they saw it was good. They saw that the light and the power of Jesus was good for that situation, but they could not see that the power and the goodness of Jesus was good for their situation. They saw that Jesus had power over that, but they could not see that Jesus had power over their lives. They could not internalize it. They rejected Jesus. But then at the end of the story, we see Jesus tell the demon-possessed man, don't come with me. Stay here. Preach to them. They need it more than you down there. It's as if Jesus has compassion on them, but we see this behavior before. Not 2 chapters before, we read about the Pharisees who also rejected Jesus. What was Jesus' response to the Pharisees who rejected him? His response was, parables. You want to reject me? Fine. You want to call me out like that? You want to call me Satan? You want to do all that? Fine. Your heart is hard. I'm going to speak in parables so that they will understand, but you won't. Why did Jesus' response to the people in Decapolis change? Why was it not the same and congruous? Why was it not the same? Forget that word. I don't even know what I'm trying to say there. Why was it not the same as it had been with the Pharisees? Because I want to show you something. In verse 15, then they came to Jesus and saw the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion. He was sitting and he was clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And those who saw it told how it happened to him who had been demon-possessed and about the swine. And they began to plead with him to depart from their region. Their first response was fear. The Pharisees responded in pride. Pride says, I know better than you. I can determine and control things better than you. I call my own shots. I'm the man. I'm the woman. Get away from me. That's pride, very self-seeking. Fear is essentially based out of confusion. Fear is basically based out of, it's a reaction. Fear is not a determination that I know better than you, Jesus. It's a fear of, I just don't know what's going on here. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. You see, it's okay to be afraid. Jesus has grace for that. We often think that, God, I can't do what you're asking me to do. I can't, because I'm afraid. And we think that we're rejecting him when we're afraid. Well, we are rejecting him, but he's giving us grace. When I saw, no word of a lie, I'm a chicken. When I saw little Leo and his dad the first time, I'm telling you, in my spirit, I was like, I need to drive that guy home. But no, I let him walk to the bus station. And then 2 days later, Jesus made it rain so that I would get it through my head. Josh, you need to give this guy a ride home so that you can talk with him because I'm setting up a conversation for you. My rejection in fear, God had grace for because he still saw that my heart was not hard. We need to stop allowing fear to control and motivate us when God asks us to do something. When fear is allowed to control us and motivate us, then that's when the heart becomes prideful. That's when the heart becomes hard. That's when we start to block out room for Jesus to make a difference in our lives. When that fear controls us, game over. But if we can move through our fear, and if we can operate through our fear into a realm of faith, well, that's amazing. Because then it's saying, you're not judging me because I'm afraid, but you're saying, hey, listen, I'll hold your hand, and in your fear, through your fear, I'll do great things through you. He's not saying we don't have to be afraid. That's what he's saying here. That's what he's not saying here. You get the point? He's saying that it's okay. You have fear. It's natural. It's normal to be afraid. I'm the worst when it comes to evangelizing the lost out there because I have so much fear in my heart of speaking to new people. You see me up here, but what you don't see is me at home. When you see me at home and people come over, I'm like, talk to my wife. It's weird. It's messed up. I can do this. But outside of this, I'm just
shy introvert kind of guy that's like, yeah, hi. You got to really work on me to get me to talk and open up. But in my fear, God does not lock me out. He holds me and he embraces me and he says, we got this. I'm not going to let the winds crash through the waves over your head. I'm not going to let the water come and drown you and swallow you up. I'm going to walk you through this opposition. I'm going to walk you through this trial. I'm going to walk you through because I've asked you to go to the other side. I've asked you to go to the people that are lost, that are dying, that are hurting, that are in bondage because they need what you've got because you've got me. That's why I said to the demon-possessed, the ex-demon-possessed man, that you can't come with me. And he's like, but I got to go with you, Jesus. He's like, no, you're not coming with me. Buddy, what are you going to do with me? I already got 12. I don't need 13. 12, I have a hard enough time with the 12 as it is, okay? I don't need 13. I need you to stay here because these people know you. These people are people that have seen you at your worst and they have now seen you at your best. Your story means something to these people. Listen to me. Your story of what Jesus has done in your life means something to the people in your life. I often wonder why we can't have to, go to places like Cuba when we can't just go to people in our own backyard or the people that God has placed us with us. Now I understand there's a whole, Judea, Samaria, uttermost parts of the world. There's this whole idea that God calls us to reach the lost here and in our own backyards, within our own nation of Canada, and then the uttermost parts of the world to go. It's not either or, but it's all and, both and. And if we truly understood that we didn't just have to go to Cuba to reach the lost, but that we could actually do it in our own backyards, we could actually do it from our own computer desks at our workplace, we could actually do it when we're walking our kids down the sidewalk, talking to our neighbors, buying lemonade from a little lemonade stand and giving them more money than it's worth, and then saying, God bless you, because little things like that plant seeds. When we understand that, when we get that through our thick skulls, something begins to transition. We begin to operate through our fear into faith. Hear that? We begin to operate through that fear and step into faith. And when you step into faith, that means you're holding on, clinging on to the hem of Jesus Christ. And he's the one that's helping you. He's the one that's walking you through it. And he's the one that's saying, I'm your biggest fan. I'm your biggest fan, and I'm going to get you through this. I am the biggest coach that you're ever going to have, and I'm going to walk you through this. And he does that because he always calls us to the other side. He's calling you, he's calling me to the other side. And the other side for you and me is the lost and the dying in our community, in our families, in our workplaces, and in Cuba, and the uttermost parts of the world. He's calling you to the other side, and it's up to you and me to respond. So here's my deal. I'm praying for you, each and every one of you, that this week, God gives you an opportunity to step through your fear and into faith, where you have a situation or a circumstance where you're like, it's too much, I just can't, And God's like, oh, calm down, little buddy, calm down. I'm going to be able to walk you through this. You see, God's grace is great, and he saw my fear, and he saw how my rejection, which is silly, but hey, it is what it was. It was what it was. But he gave me a second chance. See, that's grace. That's grace at its greatest, because he looks at the heart and says, all right, I see the heart's there. You're not responding quite yet. I'm going to, work on you a little bit. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing that he wants to work with us so that we can go to the other side and take care of business? But he also wants to work on us to make sure that you and I are the men and women that he's called us to be. He wants to break that bondages in our lives. He wants to set us free like that demon-possessed man. He wants us to totally give everything over to him. And that's what he's asking. Amen? Let's pray. Father in heaven, I thank you for your word. And I thank you that, God, the story is so great because you show us how much, you leave the 99 to go after the one. You show us how important that one is. And this story shows how important that one is because that one who was saved, that one who was healed, that one who was set free, ended up being in that location a witness for you. And in verse 20 of Mark 5, it says, he departed and began to proclaim in the Decapolis all that Jesus had done for him, and all marveled. God, I have to believe that in that area at that time, many people's lives were turned around about 180. And the thoughts and the desires of appeasing the evil spirits turned to serving and worshiping the one true living God. And God, I pray right now that will be exactly what happens in our lives. That God, you will take any and every bondage which is in our lives, and you will take that captive. And we will no longer be held captive by the bondages in our lives anymore. But God, you will take that, release that, so that we can be released to step through our fears and into faith and do what you've asked us to do. Because God, there is a lost and dying world out there. God, as I read the story of little Leo at 4 or 5 years old who didn't know anything he didn't even know your name, that breaks my heart. And if that does not break our hearts in here, then that means you need to soften our hearts just a little bit more. So soften our hearts just a little bit more, oh Lord. Soften our hearts to the point where stories like that break us because they break you. Because everyone should know about you. And if we are doing what you're calling us to do and being the men and women of Christ that you've asked us to be, then that should happen less and less and less. So God, I pray right now that we will be a generation. We will. We won't just look around at what's happening in the rest of the world and be like, oh man, it sucks. Oh God, what are you doing? Oh Lord. But our focus will be right here where you've placed us. We will pray for them. But God, right now, we have not experienced any of that, so we have the complete freedom to operate. The complete freedom to spread your word for as long as we can. So God, let us do that. Let us take advantage. The harvest is here. If the harvest ever was here, it is here now. So God, let us take advantage of that and spread the good news of Jesus Christ to every single person that you put in our place. Give us, oh Lord, this week an opportunity to do exactly that. To step through fear and into faith and allow you to do something great. God, I thank you for these people. I thank you for this great church, and I thank you for what you're doing and how your hand of blessing is upon us, Lord Jesus. I pray that you continue to do that. Continue to encourage us, continue to strengthen us, bind us together as one. And God, as we open our arms and open our wings to receive, all that you would pour out, Lord Jesus, I pray that, man, we will glorify you in everything that we do. So, Lord Jesus, we give you the praise, the glory, and honor, for you are everything. In the name that is above any other name, the sweet name of Jesus Christ, all God's people said, amen.